makeup friends, and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then hello and welcome. My name is Kara, and today I'm going to be sharing with you the items that I think are essential for anybody's makeup collection. So this was actually sparked by a comment left for me by Suzanne on a community post that I made, and she says, "Hi Kara, I haven't worn makeup in probably 30 years, mostly because my eyes are bad and it's hard to put on makeup when you have to be on top of the mirror. Lately I've been considering trying again with minimal products. Would you consider doing a video of products/brands you would suggest for someone looking to get the bare necessities? Please and thank you. P.S. I still enjoy watching your beautiful application of makeup even though I mostly just use lip balm. LOL." I'm just going to quickly interrupt myself to throw this picture up, and I will link it down below. These are from Amazon, but you can find them from other retailers. The lens flips up and down so that you can see with the one eye while applying makeup to the other. I just thought that might be helpful for anybody else who's struggling with the same issue that Suzanne has. So Suzanne, thank you so much for taking the time to leave that comment and to make that request/suggestion. I really appreciate it. And I also think it's a very relevant request. I think there's a lot of people who are returning to in-office work after being at home for the last few years, or there's people who have larger collections looking to curate them down, or people just starting into makeup and overwhelmed by the amount of selection that's out there. As well, I think that people's makeup purchasing has really changed over the last even year. I know mine has for certain, with inflation being what it is and the cost of food is astronomical. And so I'm not having that same feeling about just being able to pick up a lipstick whenever I want, or just try this new palette, or, it's not that same attitude towards makeup where more is more. Now it's really about looking at what I already have and how can I make that as versatile as possible. So I am going to touch on that towards the end of this video as well, talking about how to get the most out of the items that you already have rather than purchasing a number of individual items to achieve the same outcome. So with that said, let's get straight into the video. All right, so before we get started, I do just want to give a little bit of a caveat, being that essential makeup is going to look different for everybody based on your skin type, your skin needs, your comfort level, things of that sort. For example, for me, you can see that I have a lot of dark circling under my eyes. So if I am down to only one product, it's going to be concealer. If it's the only thing I can apply, it's going to be concealer. Whereas if you don't have dark circling, or if you do but you're completely comfortable with it, you might not view concealer as being an essential item. So take these recommendations with a bit of a grain of salt, but what I've tried to do is just create sort of a universal, very curated set of items that will get you through most situations. So having said that, let's dive in. So in typical application, I would start with a primer, but I don't consider primer to be an essential item. It's something I can very easily give up. And what I would just do instead is make sure that I moisturize my face in the morning. So this one here is from Pure. I don't even know what it's called. It's been sitting in my drawer for ages. I don't tend to do skincare down here, but I keep this just in case. I don't actually know why I keep it down here, but I do. I damned if I know what this is called. The 4-in-1 Cloud Cream Gel to Water Hydrating Essential Moisturizer. So I haven't actually done any skincare today, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of this moisturizer on. Now, keeping in mind this is not a necessary step, I would just consider this to be part of the morning routine. Brush your teeth, wash your face, moisturize your face, you're good to go. So I'm just going to bring that in. This is a very, very lightweight moisturizer. I can't say that I love it, but it gets the job done at any rate. So there we go. All right, now that my skin is revived and moisturized, I am going to skip foundation. I don't think that it's essential and it's not necessarily an everyday item, but I am going to go in with concealer. Like I said, this is like my holy grail item. And as well, concealer I can use to spot conceal any issues I might be having on the rest of my face. So the one that I've got here is the Conceal the Deal concealer from Lawless. It says that it's full coverage. I would argue, no, it's not. But that actually works for this kind of makeup where I'm not doing a full face of product. I don't necessarily want the highest coverage concealer because then it just produces too much contrast. There's like all of this coverage here and then nothing else on the rest of my face, and it just looks disjointed. So a slightly lower coverage concealer works better when I'm just doing minimal makeup. So I'm just going to go ahead and dab a little bit of this under my eyes. I don't really have any particular issues right now that I'm dealing with the rest of my face, but I'll add a little bit more to this aggressive freckle over here, and then just a little bit here as well, just for the sake of including some spot concealing, if I'm being honest. So I also, in preparing for this video, went through my brushes and figured which brushes are like the essential, which ones are the workhorses. And I was going to include this one as sort of an optional one. There's 3 essential brushes, I think, and then this one is just, it's a nice to have. For me, I don't particularly like buffing out my concealer with my finger. I like going in with the brush first and then patting it in with the finger. So that's how I'm going to apply it. But of course, if you wanted to skip purchasing a specific concealer brush, you could just use your fingers. So I'm just going to buff this out a bit and make sure that it is really blended along those edges. Really bring it down so that there's not this stark contrast. Like it's not like concealer just ends here and then there's nothing else. I really kind of want it to fade. And then when there's really not that much product left, that's when I'm going to bring it over my eyelids to help cancel out some of that discoloration that I've got going on there. And then for it to also act like an eyeshadow primer, because I'm going to forego that step. So there's the concealer applied, blended out on those little spots on my face and over the eyelids as well. Now the reason I go in at like the very end of the blending to use it on my eyelids is so that there's not a lot of product that can get trapped in those creases. I just want a very, very light coating, if you will, of the concealer on my eyelids to act as a primer. I just don't want a ton of product up there, or else it just makes life that much more difficult. You get a lot of creasing. Eyeshadows don't really apply nicely on top of it. So just a very, very minimal amount. All right, so concealer is now patted into place, blended out. Eyelids are not tacky. There's not a ton of concealer up there, and everything is looking blended and natural. So then I really hemmed and hawed, and even as I'm sitting here filming, I'm still hemming and hawing over whether I think powder is essential. I hate to say use your own judgment, because that's really not the point of this video. It's for me to make recommendations, but a lot of people don't powder their concealer and set it that way. I am somebody who does set my concealer, and I feel incomplete without it set. So although this one is not creasing and it's not super sticky under my eyes or anything like that, I am going to go in and set it with powder because I don't feel right not doing it. It's very personal. If you can get away without setting your concealer, save the step. You don't need to worry about it. But what I would recommend is a pressed powder, especially if you are newer to makeup. I just find that they're easier to use than a loose powder. Having said that, I typically prefer a loose powder, but in terms of ease of application, you don't have to worry about getting too much on your brush. You don't have to worry about it like fluming all over the place, anything of that sort. So this is the only pressed powder that I have. This one is Flum. This fun fact, that's what my daughter used to call her thumb. And we still make fun of her because there was a day where she was like, "Lasterday I bitted my flum." If that is not the most toddler sentence ever, I don't know what is, but she's 10 now and she hates when we bring that up. But lasterday she bitted her flum. Anyways, again, this is from Florasis. This is their gorgeous Peach Blossom Silk Powder. And it is just a pressed powder. As I said, it does come with a puff, but I'm going to use the first of what I consider to be an essential brush. And this is the Real Techniques setting brush. And I have had this one at least 7 years. If it has ever dropped one bristle, I would be shocked. These are workhorse brushes. They do not give up. You can wash them repeatedly. You can use them repeatedly. They hold their shape. There's no splaying of any of the bristles. Nothing's ever gotten loose. The lettering hasn't even worn off. Nothing is like rattling on it. These are virtually indestructible in my opinion. I have had it, like I said, for at least 7 years, and I have no need to replace this one. So these, and they don't have like a terrible price point either. They're very, very reasonably priced. So if you are looking to purchase brushes, you really don't need to go the super expensive route. There are some very good, very affordable brushes that are going to hold up far better than the more expensive options. So there we go. All the concealer is now set into place. That powder is completely translucent, so you don't see any sort of white cast on the skin. And now I feel confident in my concealer and that it's going to remain in place without creasing, without caking up all day. Moving on from there, I think that blush is necessary. I don't think highlighter and bronzer are, but I do think that blush really just helps to bring life to the face. Having said that though, I was also thinking, how do we minimize the number of products while maximizing their versatility? And that is where something like a face palette can come into play. This is the only face palette that I have that has a highlighter, bronzer, and blush in it. The rest of them are more blush palettes that I have. But this one from Jouer, this is the Champagne and Macron face palette. I don't think you can get it anymore, unfortunately. But as you can see, you've got 2 blushes, a highlighter, and a bronzer. You can use those as eyeshadows as well, and you would have a complete eye look here. You can throw some bronzer in the crease, a little bit of highlighter on the inner corner. This one has more of a satiny kind of finish. You could put that over the lid and away you go, or just throw some bronzer in the crease and call it done. Like, this just adds versatility, and then you can also do your face with it. So for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to use this on my face because I also want to talk about some neutral eyeshadow options, so that if you don't want to purchase an entire face palette, but you are just looking for bare minimal essential eyeshadows, then I can give you some options. So I'm going to go in with this, and I am just going to stick to the blush because, like I said, I don't think that highlighter and bronzer are necessary. I don't tend to go without them, but if I'm in a rush or I'm just looking to keep things very, very minimal, I will go for blush and forego the others. So for blush, I'm going to go back in with that same setting brush from Real Techniques, pick up some of the matte blush here, tap off the excess, and then just sweep it onto the cheeks. And what I would say is, when you're looking for a blush, look for one that sort of replicates the color that you naturally flush to. So whether you're exerting yourself or you've been outside in the cold, what color does your face normally go to? If you can find a blush that's similar to that, you're always going to look natural. So while I do love a peachy blush and I do love a true red blush, those aren't really the colors that I tend to flush to, whereas more of like a rosy kind of tone is. And so when I put this on, it's not necessarily going to look like makeup. It just looks like I am feeling particularly healthy that day, or I've just run up a flight of stairs minus the gasping and wheezing. So as you can see though, this brush does a great job at blending it out. And then to unify my face, I also tend to just pat a little bit of the leftover blush just towards the tip of my nose, just so that there's like a continuous sort of line or field of vision across my face, so that it's not just, here's my blush, everything else is bare. Now I do want to take a moment here to talk about another essential brush. So while I am saying that bronzer isn't really necessary, if you want to go down that road, or if you prefer to powder your entire face, this is a brush that can do both of those things. So again, this is from Real Techniques. This is their contour brush, which oddly enough, that's the only thing I don't really use this brush for, but I really like this one for bronzer, and I'll show you why. So I've got another actual bronzer brush here, and you can see the difference between them. I don't have a particularly large forehead, so when I go in with an actual bronzer brush, like I got nowhere to go. It's going to blend bronzer right into my eyebrow. So I'm going to end up with all this bronzer across my forehead unless I'm doing it this way and then I have to sort of put this into the bronzer properly. You'll see me use this. It is completely usable. However, look at the difference, right? So I can get a lot more precise, I gotta stop this. I can get a lot more precise precision with the Real Techniques brush than I can with an actual bronzer brush. So that's what I would recommend because it's gonna make your life a little bit easier. You can get a bit more precise placement, you can still blend things out, but you're not gonna have to worry about like an entire forehead full of bronzer. As well, if you're powdering your face, you can use this anywhere that you want. You can get nice and precise in and around the nose. You could even use it under your eyes if you wanted to. So that's another great option for you. So then let's talk about eyeshadow. So I've brought out 2 palettes and then I've curated 4 singles. Each of them are going to give you basically the exact same vibes. They're not dupes of one another, but very, very similar. So let's start off with the most affordable option. This is from e.l.f., one of their bite-sized palettes. This is in Cream and Sugar, and as you can see, it's a very, very simplistic palette. You've got a transition shade over here, a deep matte over here, and then 2 different shimmer shadows in the middle. Very similar to that, but if you wanted to go more of the indie route, you could look to Cold Brew from Kaleidos. Again, very similar. In here, you're getting 3 matte shades and then 1 shimmer. This shimmer though is going to blow the e.l.f. shimmer out of the water. This one is like high octane, full impact. So if you like that kind of thing, you'll love this palette. If you want a much more subdued and more subtle look, I would suggest not going this route. And then I've also curated 4 singles from MAC. So I've got them sitting here. This one is in the shade Nylon. It is a nice shimmery shadow. We've got a very light, cool-toned brown called Omega. Woodwinked over here is sort of a mid-tone brown with a bit of a shimmery, satiny kind of finish to it. And then we have Brown Down, which is a deep matte brown. So for this video, I'm going to use the MAC shadows, if only because I don't tend to use MAC on camera very much. I don't really know why that is, but we're going to change that today. Also, if you wanted to make this even more simplistic, just going in with Woodwink, putting that all over the lid, blending it up a little bit over the crease, looks perfect. So, do we want to do it that way? No. First I want to show you Omega because it is also a one and done kind of look. And I'm going to go in again with that setting brush. Now, it looks absurd because it is so large. Have a little faith in the process. So I'm going to go in with Omega. Just going to pick it up on the very tip of the brush and knock off the excess. And then I'm going to put that right into my crease. And I'm not worried about precision. So I can blend it up. I can blend it all over the lid. And all it's really going to do is just add a bit of definition because it is on the cooler tone side. It's going to make the eyes just a bit more defined and create some natural looking shadowing. So that's the other thing that I should mention is that, again, these shade selections are going to vary based on your skin tone as well. So if you have a much deeper skin tone than me, Omega is not going to show up, but you could find a cooler toned brown in a deeper option that's going to produce the same similar sort of effect. So there we can see, I'm just going to add just a little bit more just for the sake of comparison and making those comparisons a little bit easier for you guys to see. So again, not worried about precision here. This is not about being perfect with the placement. It's just about buffing it in and getting that shadow on. So there we have it. You can see even just in here, there's just a little bit more definition. You can see a little bit more of that shadowing. It just creates a little bit more shape to the eye than wearing nothing. So we're just going to concentrate on this eye and then I'll go and finish up this one off camera just so that we're not here forever. So then Woodwinked. So I want to show you what Woodwinked looks like all over the lid. I'm going to use the same brush. If you really wanted to, you could go in with like one of those color switch things, paper towel, just rub it off on your hand. Like there's a number of ways of cleaning this in between, but Omega is really not a deep shade, so it's really not going to jack anything up if I don't bother cleaning the brush. So I'm going to go in with Wood Winked. This time, instead of picking it up on the edge of the brush, I'm using the flatter side. And then I'm just going to deposit that all over the lid. And again, I'm not super fussed about how precise it is, because we're just going to go in and blend it anyways. So you can see it has a bit of a satiny finish, so it's going to reflect a little bit of light and again, just bring more life to your face without being like, here's my eyeshadow. Okay, so you could call it done just as this is, but I do want to bring in some of that matte brown just to, again, show you different options. So if you wanted to make it a little bit more dramatic, you can add a little bit of the dark brown to the outer V. You can line your lower lash line with it and just create even more dimension that way. So the last brush that I want to talk about then is this guy here from Sigma. This is the Sigma E33 Detail Diffuse Crease Brush. So compare the E33 to the E40 and you can see just how precise it is. That E40 is one that I would normally use, this one here, for my crease and putting in that transition shade. But this one just keeps everything that much more precise and smaller, so it works out really nicely for lining your lower lash line, putting things along that outer corner, but it still has that blendability to it. So let's just go in and apply that deep matte brown shade. Again, that one's called Brown Down. So I'm not picking up a ton. I'm just going to lay some of that along the outer V of my eye, blend it up and out a little bit. And again, you can play around with shapes and what works well for your eyes. For me, typically having it come straight out a little bit because I have really hooded, almost downturned eyes. If I bring that crease shade sort of straight out and then down and make a bit of a triangle out here, it tends to lift my eyes up. Whereas a more rounded look like I'm doing right now, it's a little bit more subtle in its approach. It doesn't have that same lifting effect, but it just makes me feel and look a bit more polished and put together. So then I am going to pick up a little bit of that matte brown just on the tip of that brush. Again, knock off the excess and then just line my lower lash line to about halfway across. I don't want to bring it all the way into the inner corner, or else that tends to just sort of close the eye off a little bit. And then I'll just leave it like that. So you can build this up and make this really intense if you wanted to and really smoke out that dark brown. But for today's purposes, see, if I move this too much, the MAC shadows, like their magnets suck. Now I'm going to go in with nylon, pick it up on the very tip of this brush. You could use your baby finger. My eyes are like rather deep set, so I have a hard time getting any sort of precision using my baby finger. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of that shade nylon just into that inner corner to brighten things up. You can see I have a lot of shadowing in there, again, because they are deeper set. This just helps to create that illusion that they're not as deep set as they are. So there's the eyeshadow done. So then for eyeliner, I would strongly recommend a brown pencil liner. So this one that I have here is from Cheekbone Beauty in the shade Cedar Brown, but any brown pencil pretty much will do. So what I like about brown is that it's just a bit softer and a little bit more approachable. It's not as harsh against your skin tone, again, depending on your skin tone, but it's not as dramatic. Brown is just that much more quote unquote wearable. And again, it's a little bit more user-friendly, especially if you're a beginner or just getting back into it. So what I especially like about pencil liners is that, again, you don't really need to worry about precision. So, for example, I take my brown pencil liner, I line my lash line, again, going only about halfway. It looks super messy. That's totally fine, because then I'm just going to take my fingertip and just smudge the heck out of it. I do have like a little spongy brush, I guess you could say, and I will typically use that, but you can just use your finger. You don't need to buy additional tools when you've got fingers. So it just helps to give that illusion that your lashes are a little bit fuller, and again, just adds a little bit more definition to the eyes. So again, I'm going to finish up this eye and then I'll do this one off camera. So let's talk about mascara. There are no end of mascara options. You can find mascaras from $3. You can find mascaras that are $70. Find the price point that's comfortable for you. For today's video, I'm going to be talking about one from the drugstore. This is the Essence Lash Princess, the one with the turquoise coloring on it. I will show you what the brush looks like. It's really hard to mess up mascara when you have such a narrow brush like this. You don't have bristles all over the place. You don't have a weird shape to it. You don't have to worry about whether you go in this side or this side. Some of them have that weird scoop in them. You don't have to worry about any of that. This is pretty much a brainless mascara, and frankly, I like that. So I'm gonna go in, and I tend to concentrate my mascara placement towards the outside. These are the longest lashes that I have, and again, it just helps to like create that illusion of lifting my eye up. I will put it all over my lash line, but the majority of it goes on this outer part. Now, you can do lower lash line, but you don't have to. Sometimes I find that if I'm just doing really minimal makeup and then I put mascara on my lower lash line, it just looks off balance. It's too eye heavy, and it can actually like bring a little bit more attention to this under eye area. I've already gone in with a concealer that's not as high coverage, so I don't need any attention on my under eyes, so I'm good with just doing the upper lashes. So there you can see the comparison without any liner or mascara, with it. You can see that it just opens up the eyes, lifts those lashes up a bit, and just brings it all together. So now we are on to lips, and I think everybody should have at least one neutral and one brighter, bolder color. For today's video, I'm going to be showing you a few neutral options, and then I'm going to use a bright red shadow to show you that it doesn't have to be scary. So let's start with the neutrals first. I am going to show you a few options, but if I had to choose one and one only, it would be Modesty from MAC. You can see that I have used the heck out of this shade, but this is like the perfect neutral lipstick for me. I'm going to go ahead and apply it. It goes with everything. It is a My Lips But Better kind of shade. As you can see, top, if you can see my top lip, it's quite small. Top lip versus the lower lip, very, very similar color. It also has a really nice formula. This is a cream sheen from MAC, so it does have a little bit of a satiny finish, but it lasts longer than one of their luster lipsticks do. Won't last as long as a matte lipstick from MAC would, but it's very, very easy to touch up on the fly, so I don't mind that at all. But this is Modesty. It's got a nice balance of pink and brown. I feel like it can go with pretty much any eyeshadow look that I do. I could just wear it on its own with just some mascara and concealer. It's not going to look out of place because it's basically my lip color but enhanced. So this one I think is the very definition of an essential shade, at least for my own preferences, skin tone, all that. But I have some other options for you, and I've got a bit of a spread in terms of their price point as well. So if you're looking for something budget friendly, I've got you covered. If you're looking to splurge, I've got you covered there as well. So for a budget friendly option, this lipstick here from Essence is the semi-matte lipstick in the shade Charming. And this one is very similar to MAC Modesty, but it is a little bit deeper. There's also this option here from Milani, which is in the shade Pleasure. And I put the little like warning about this one. It does apply really comfortably. It feels fantastic on the lips, but I do find that it escapes from the center of the lips a little bit, so it'll be fine for about, 3/4 of my lips, and then the very middle part, it tends to escape from. Not all the time, but it happens. So I just want to put that on your radar, but in terms of the shade, it is a great option for having an essential lipstick. And then if you want to splurge, I've got a liquid lipstick here from Gucci. This one's in the shade Grace Cinnamon. And I find, for me personally, if I'm going to invest in a really expensive lipstick, I want it to be one that I can wear all the time. So this is a great option for that. And it is, again, just another pinky neutral shade. These ones I find These liquid lipsticks I find to be quite comfortable as well. They're not the most long wearing of the liquid lipsticks that I've tried, but they don't dry my lips out. I don't get that like wrinkly sort of look where it's accentuating every line that I have. They don't bleed around. They don't get all like pilled up and balled up on my lips. So it is a very comfortable formula, very pricey. All right, so now we're going to talk about red lipstick. So the one that I have here is from Lisa Eldridge. This one is in the shade Velvet Ribbon, and it is a true red. So this is the one I'm going to be showing you more so for the color than, I don't think you necessarily need to go and spend this kind of money on lipstick, but I leave that for you to decide. So people get very, very intimidated by red lipstick because they think it has to be all or nothing, and it doesn't. So you can make like a lip stain effect with this by just picking up a little bit of product on your finger and just patting it onto your lips. And then you have a lot more control over how intense that color shows up. So there, I've got a red lipstick on. Doesn't look full impact red, but there is definitely some color there. It is more like a blurred matte kind of finish, but if you wanted to, you could go in with a little bit of lip balm and just pat that on top, and then you have a glossy sort of finish. So just gonna put a little bit of my lip balm there, and there you go. So again, you have a bit more of that like lip gloss kind of look without actually having to buy a lip gloss. And then you can just build it up from there, and you can go full intensity if you want to, but you certainly don't need to. And it just, I'm including it to show that you don't have to purchase a million products to have a versatile collection. It's really about getting creative in terms of how you apply the products that you do have, layering things up, using them in an unconventional sort of way, using brushes in a way other than what they're described for. And you can just create a collection that works for you without having to purchase a million items. And again, the options that I showed today, I could really punch it up and make it super dramatic using the exact same options if I wanted to. In fact, why don't I do that off camera? And then I'll put a picture up here so you can see just how dramatic this can get and show you just sort of the range of options within a very limited amount of product. So with all that said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I will see you in my next video. Until then, just be a decent human being. Bye for now.